Hello my friends, in today's video we will take a look at the state of the Fujifilm X-mount system in early 2022. The X-mount is a well-established system which kind of goes its own way. Fujifilm's approach is a lot different in comparison to other four major camera manufacturers, and I think that's a good thing for the whole industry. In this video we will take a look at the strengths and the weaknesses of the E-mount, and I will try to help you decide whether it is the right system to invest into. One thing that I really like about the X-mount is that it is distinctively not trying to compete with a full frame. It is an APS-C system built in accordance with both advantages and disadvantages of the format. Fujifilm is not always trying to make the most rational products. The experience is often a higher priority than the output. Almost all current X-mount cameras are built around Fujifilm's X-Trans4 processor and X-Processor 4 combination. X-Trans4 is a 26-megapixel APS-C BSI sensor. It was introduced in 2018, but it is still a very modern sensor. At 26 megapixels, the pixel density is still reasonable and it can be matched by some of the X-mount lenses. Overall, this sensor, and therefore the cameras that use it, still offers very nice output. The X-Trans mosaic issues were fortunately solved with the X-Trans4, which is documented in my lens testing on this channel. You won't see any artifacts even at 300% magnification. X-Trans4 cameras have some of the most accurate colors, which is what I prefer. It makes editing RAWs very easy and it saves you a lot of time. Fujifilm is also known for their film simulations. I mostly use those for on-the-go publishing. My most favorite are Classic Chrome and Classic Negative. I also like that the Fujifilm always gives you the same image quality regardless of which X-mount camera you choose. The only exception is X-T200, which uses non-X-Trans, non-BSI sensor. Fujifilm X-T4 is a bit of a split personality camera. On one hand, it has all of the modern features such as BSI sensor, in-body image stabilization, 4K 60p 10-bit video, and yes, even the rotating screen. On the other hand, it has analog style controls, vintage design, and relatively flat shape. It seems that Fujifilm is kind of splitting their lineup in two categories. The first one are pragmatic cameras such as the X-S10 or GFX100S, and the other are experience-oriented cameras such as X100V or X-Pro 3. X-T4 is, in my opinion, exactly in the middle, and for the most part I can say that it works. At the moment, it is the most capable Fujifilm X-mount camera on the market. It combines the X-Trans4 sensor with very effective in-body image stabilization, great video specs, and larger battery. X-T4 offers a good balance between the shooting experience and ease of use. It has plenty of controls including dedicated exposure dial and 4-way pad. The build quality is generally good, except the mechanism of the rotating screen. The electronic viewfinder and the monitor on the X-T4 are very good. It can shoot 4K DCI up to 60p internally in 10-bit, so it is still one of the most capable mirrorless video cameras. The autofocus works pretty good after the firmware updates. It is more than sufficient for the usual situations, but it is still not on the Sony level. It may still lack the smoothness in video. That still largely depends on the lenses that you are using. It is always fast and accurate, but there might be some hunting during the transitions. A controversial feature of the X-T4 is a camcorder-style rotating screen which doesn't match the vintage styling and analog-style controls of the X-T4. The grip on the X-T4 is also very shallow. On the other hand, I can say that I am very happy with my X-T4, which I've been using for about 2 years now. The X-S10 is a purely pragmatic and functional camera. It has a proper grip, conventional PSAM dial, and standard controls. The biggest highlight of the X-S10 in my opinion is the size to performance and feature set ratio. Fujifilm was able to pack an APS-C sensor and in-body image stabilization into an extremely small body. It uses a magnesium frame, so the build quality is at least one class above the X-T30. It uses the X-Trans4 sensor, so the image quality, dynamic range, and the low light performance are again great. The in-body image stabilization in X-S10 is very effective. It is much better than I would expect based on that 5 EV rating. It can also work together with optical image stabilization in the lenses and provide extra stop of stabilization. The X-S10 has similar video specs as the X-T30, so downsampled 4K DCI up to 30p and 200 megabits per second. It can also output 10-bit 422 externally, which is a very interesting option. A big improvement is that it can shoot 30 minutes of 4K video thanks to that magnesium frame. The autofocus is basically the same as with the X-T4. There are some compromises such as the smaller battery, small viewfinder, and the lack of weather sealing. All of those are in my opinion acceptable at this size and price point. Fujifilm X-S10 is still my most favorite camera under $1,000 or euros on the market. X-E4 is Fujifilm's minimalist package. This one is more oriented towards the shooting experience. It still uses the same sensor and CPU as the other X-Trans cameras, so the image quality is also the same. X-E4 is again an extremely small camera. It is just 12 cm wide and it weighs 364 grams. X-E4 has no in-body image stabilization because it stays true to the X-E concept as I've explained in my review. The build quality is really good with this one. It is almost on par with X100V. It also retains a lot of X100V shooting experience. It is basically an alternative to those who like the X100V but don't want to be restrained by a fixed lens. It actually shoots great 4K video, but the controls and the form factor aren't very video friendly. It has a great 1.62 million dot display, but the EVF is very small. Other than that, it is a lot of fun to use, especially if you pair it with a 27mm f2.8 Mark II pancake lens. X-T30 II is very similar to X-E4, it just has more controls and worse build quality. To be honest, I definitely recommend the X-S10 instead if you want an all-round capable camera. If you want something more experience-oriented, I recommend the X-E4. It is cheaper than the X-S10, but I think that the in-body image stabilization in X-S10 is worth the extra money. On the other hand, it has those analog-style controls, so it might be an interesting choice if you are looking for those. Fujifilm X100V is not an X-mount camera, but I think that it should be mentioned here. This is Fujifilm's fixed-lens APS-C camera with traditional styling and analog controls. X100 line has always been primarily about the shooting experience. With the V version, Fujifilm has basically completed the whole package. X-Trans 4 sensor in the X100V is paired with a new 35mm full-frame equivalent lens. The overall image quality is great. What I appreciate the most about the X100V is the perfect combination of vintage styling and modern technology. New additions such as tilting high-resolution screen and improved autofocus system made the shooting experience easier without compromising the vintage vibe. Despite that it is mainly intended for street photography, it still has very advanced video features such as real 4K DCI, 200 megabits per second codec, F-Lock, and even 10-bit 422 external recording. I really like 35mm focal length, although I would like to see 28mm X100 one day. Overall, the X100V is in my opinion a great camera, and if you are maybe burnt out on the photography a little bit, this is probably the one to get. X-T200 is currently the only X-mount camera on the sale without the X-Trans 4 sensor. It uses a well-known 24MP APS-C sensor with no backside illumination. It is an entry-level camera. The main highlight of the X-T200 is probably the 3.5-inch 2.7 million dot display and the user interface. It probably offers the most modern camera interface similar to smartphones in some ways. It is also a very compact camera and it shoots solid 4K video with quite effective digital stabilization. On the other hand, the build quality is not great and the output lags behind the X-Trans 4 cameras in terms of the detail and the dynamic range. I hope that the display and the user interface from the X-T200 will continue to be developed and that we will see it on some higher-end camera in the future. The near future of the X-mount body seems to be the X-H2. This will most likely be a pragmatic hybrid camera with classic controls, standard grip, and PSAM dial. The most interesting aspects of the X-H2 may be the video specs, which will probably go beyond 4K 60p, and autofocus improvements. X-H2 will also most likely be the first camera with X-Trans 5 sensor. That brings us to probably the most important X-mount lens of the past years. That is the XF 18mm F1.4 R LM WR. Why is it the most important X-mount lens? Well, Fujifilm mentions the 40MP rendering capabilities of this lens a lot, and there are some rumors about a 40MP sensor in the future X-mount cameras. And the 18mm f1.4 can really render a lot of megapixels. It is by far the sharpest crop lens that I've ever tested. It is perfectly sharp across the frame right from f1.4. That indicates that a high-resolution sensor may actually make sense when combined with the latest lens design. Two more f1.4 lenses got the new R LM WR version, and those are the 23mm f1.4 and 33mm f1.4. If those are as good as the 18mm, it would be a very solid base for future high-resolution system. I will try to review those as well. Fujifilm also makes a great series of f2 lenses. Those are optically very solid, very compact and weather sealed. Importantly, they feature new autofocus motors, so they won't compromise the overall autofocus performance. They are also very well made. These are available as 23, 35, 50 and 90mm. Another significant prime is 50mm f1.0. That one basically gives you full frame experience with an APS-C system. It was a little bit controversial because some reviews found it to be soft. It performed very well in my sharpness testing. As expected, there is chromatic aberration at f1.0, but besides that it performs great. The bokeh on the 50mm f1 looks great in my opinion. It is super smooth with beautiful rendition. The build quality is also great. The only significant downside is that the autofocus is a bit louder than I would like it to be. One more prime lens that I will mention is my personal favorite, which is XF 27mm f2.8 II. This is basically a 40mm pancake for the X mount. The physical presence of 27mm f2.8 is basically negligible. It is not the sharpest lens that I've ever tested, but considering that it weighs just 86 grams, I definitely can't complain. It is more than good enough. Weather sealing and aperturing are also very nice upgrades over the first version. It can basically transform any X-mount camera into a point-and-shoot sized camera. It is a great match for X-E4, but I also like to use it on my X-T4. There is a solid choice of X-mount standard zooms. The red badge 16-55mm f2.8 is the most high-end option. It is very sharp even at f2.8 except the corners at 55mm where you need to stop it down to about f5.6 to get the maximal sharpness. It has a nice optical character and it just takes nice pictures. The build quality is great and it is weather sealed. The autofocus is good overall except for some hunting and busy scenes. The bokeh has some swirly look to it, so whether you like it or not will be a matter of preference. My favorite standard zoom for the X mount is XF 18-55mm f2.8-4 R LM OIS. This is kind of a kit lens plus. The optical performance is actually surprisingly good with this one. It definitely produces very nice pictures in the real world use. The optical stabilization is very effective, especially in combination with the in-body image stabilization in X-T4. Having this kind of performance in such a tiny lens is great. I think that it is a big strength of the whole X-mount system. XF 16-80mm F4 R OIS WR is the newest standard zoom. It provides a very versatile focal range and stabilization in a reasonably sized package. Unfortunately, the sharpness in the corners is below average. Even if you stop it down, the corners will never be great. If the versatility is more important than the optical qualities for you, it is a valid option though. Two significant zooms that I haven't tested yet are the red badge XF 8-16mm f2.8 R LM WR and XF 50-140mm f2.8 R LM OIS WR. These are also on my 2022 review list. To sum up, Fujifilm X-mount is a well-developed APS-C system. It may not offer the most technologically advanced equipment, but it is an out-of-the-box option for those looking for more experience-oriented cameras. The selection of cameras is quite complete, with an exception of a pragmatic hybrid high-end camera, which should come in form of X-H2 soon. Some technical aspects such as the video autofocus and parfocality of the lenses should also be improved though. The lens selection is quite complete. Some of the lenses such as the 18mm f1.4 are brilliant. More third-party lens options would still be welcome, although Sigma and Viltrox already have strong offerings. 2022 should reveal a lot about the future of the X-mount. We will probably get a new sensor and processor, so I'm looking forward to that. For the time being, I will definitely continue to enjoy and review current X-mount gear. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.